Have you ever had one of those weeks where life apparently subscribed you to the premium disaster package? Your car won't start. Your kids get sick. The air conditioner decides it's going to retire. Your boss sends you an email that begins with, "Can we talk?" Which is, by the way, has never been followed up by, "I just wanted to tell you how amazing you are." Then, just when things can't possibly get any worse, your smoke detector starts chirping. Not because it's a fire, but because the battery apparently waited until 2:37 in the morning to die out of pure spite. You fix one problem, two more show up. Does that sound familiar? 3,000 years ago, the Greeks, they had a name for it. That name was the Hydra. Welcome back to Myths and Mayhem, where gods create problems, kings make them worse, and some guy on YouTube apparently can't stop talking about the Hydra. Last week, we watched Heracles battle one of Greek mythology's most famous monsters. Cut off one head, two more grow back in its place. It's a great monster, and it's an even better story. But I don't think that the reason people have been telling this story for nearly 3,000 years is because they're fascinated by a giant snake. I think they keep telling it because eventually every single one of us meets a Hydra. When I was younger, I thought life's problems arrived one at a time. You'd lose a job, you'd deal with it and move on. Someone would get sick, you help them recover, and eventually life would return to normal. You lose someone you love, you grieve, and then you slowly begin to heal. It's painful, absolutely, but it's straightforward. The older I've gotten, the more I realize that life almost never works that way. Problems, they travel in packs. You lose your job, and suddenly you're worried about paying the mortgage. That financial stress starts affecting your marriage. You stop sleeping. Your health starts beginning to suffer. Before long, you're snapping at the people that you love the most. Not because they did anything wrong, but because you're exhausted from carrying the weight of everything else. You thought you were fighting one problem, and in reality, you're fighting a Hydra. That's exactly what made the Hydra such a brilliant monster. It wasn't terrifying because it had a lot of heads. It was terrifying because every attempt to solve the problem the same way only made it worse. Cut off one head, two more appeared. It didn't matter how strong Heracles was or how hard he swung the sword. The harder he fought the way that he had always fought, the bigger the problem became. And maybe that's why this story has survived for nearly 3,000 years. Because sooner or later, every one of us discovers that some of life's biggest battles don't come one at a time. They pile on. One crisis becomes two becomes four, and before long, it feels like you're surrounded by problems growing faster than you can solve them. When I was a kid, I didn't understand what addiction looked like. I didn't know what depression looked like. I certainly didn't understand what unresolved trauma could do to a person. I just knew that dinner wasn't getting made, so I learned how to cook. I knew that my little brother needed someone to take care of him, so I stepped in. I knew my sister needed someone beside her, so I tried to be there. As a child, it would have been easy to believe that addiction was the monster. Looking back at it, I don't think it was. Before there were drugs, there was unimaginable loss. A baby died while my mom was caring for him. It wasn't because she had failed. Sometimes terrible things happen to good people. And then the man that she loved, the man that she was planning on marrying, was killed in a drive-by shooting while he was just taking a walk to calm down after an argument. And just like that, another devastating blow. Then came the guilt, the grief, the loneliness, the questions that never seemed to have satisfying answers. Eventually, the addiction wasn't the beginning of the story. It was just another head. That's one of the reasons why I think the Hydra still matters. We have a tendency to judge the head we can see while completely missing the monster underneath. Now, think about people that you've met through your life. A coworker who seems angry all of the time, a teenager acting out, a friend who suddenly pulls away from everyone, the family member struggling with addiction, a spouse overwhelmed by anxiety. Most of the time, we notice the behavior. We notice the head. What we don't often stop to ask is, what happened? What burden have they been carrying? What battle started all of this? Now, to be clear, understanding someone's pain doesn't excuse harmful choices. Heracles still had to fight the Hydra. My mom still had to make the difficult decision to seek help and begin rebuilding her life. We're all responsible for the choices that we make, but understanding why someone is bleeding isn't the same as excusing the wound. Sometimes compassion begins with curiosity. My favorite part of the Hydra story has nothing to do with Heracles' strength. It's the moment that he realizes that he can't win alone. The greatest hero in Greek mythology needed help. And I love that because somewhere along the way, we've convinced ourselves that asking for help is a sign of weakness. The Greeks seem to understand something that we often forget. Needing help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. My mom eventually found people willing to carry the torch beside her. Family, doctors, people who refused to give up on her. She went to rehab, got clean, and slowly rebuilt her life. It wasn't because she suddenly became stronger than she had been before. It was because she finally wasn't fighting alone. When I look back at my own life, I realized that I've had Iolauses too. My grandparents, my aunts and uncles, teachers who believed in me, mission leaders who gave me direction, friends who stood beside me, my wife who's walked through life's battles with me. None of them fought these battles for me. They simply refused to let me fight them alone. And maybe that's the question that this myth leaves us with. Who has been your Iolaus? Who has carried a torch for you when life felt overwhelming? And maybe the harder question is, who needs you to carry the torch for them? Because sometimes helping someone doesn't mean fixing every problem that they're facing. Sometimes it simply means showing up, listening, and refusing to walk away and stand beside them long enough that when the next head comes, it never has a chance to grow. I don't think that the Greeks kept telling the story about the Hydra because they believed in a giant multi-headed serpent who roamed the earth. I think they kept telling the story because grief is real, trauma is real, addiction is real, fear, anxiety, heartbreak, and loss are all real. Those are the monsters every generation will eventually encounter. If you've ever felt like every time you've solved one problem, two more appeared, you're not alone, you're not failing, you're fighting a Hydra. The encouraging part of the story isn't that Heracles never struggled. It's that he learned he didn't have to face this monster the same way forever. He didn't have to face it alone. Sometimes courage looks like picking up a sword. Sometimes courage looks like accepting help from a friend. And then again, sometimes courage looks like being willing to carry that torch for someone else. If this reflection resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. You never know when your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Until next time, stay curious, stay legendary, and if life starts feeling like a Hydra, don't fight it alone. Find your Iolaus. See you next time.
And if you're enjoying Myths and Mayhem, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.